Hello, guys, and welcome back to Exit or Die, the no bullshit podcast for startups, founders, investors, and all the operators who are building real company. My guest today is Fabiola Munguia, co-founder of Secfix, a company helping startups automate security and compliance without slowing them down. Because let's be honest, most founders don't think about compliance until a customer asks for it or until something breaks. And in today's world, data protection, cybersecurity, or security isn't a nice to have anymore, it's the price of entry. Fabiola, welcome to Exit or Die.
Thanks, Peter. Super excited to be here today.
Yeah, I would say let's start directly into the topic. Let's start with the uncomfortable truth. Most startups ignore security and compliance until it becomes a blocker. Why is that still happening?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question, and that a lot of companies ignore it in the beginning. And like startup founders are so busy with their daily ops and trying to reach their targets for the next round, or becoming profitable, whatever the company target is, that they actually forget about security. So until it breaks their product, they don't really think about it. So they're just so focused on shipping features, and that's actually a real problem, because the moment it comes to like having an enterprise deal that they want to close, or they start getting a lot of security questionnaires, they actually start thinking about it, and they realize that they should have done it earlier. So yeah, it's definitely better to be a little bit more preventive, I would say.
Mm. But what do you think? At what point does security go from later problem to existential risk?
Yeah, I think there are 2 points, to be honest. Like, one is more commercial. If you're trying to move up market and trying to close those bigger enterprise deals, then there's no way around it. You're gonna get asked, how's your security posture? And not only like call, they're actually gonna send you these questionnaires that have like 150 to 200 questions, and it's all about compliance, security. How do you do pen testing? What are your security culture and best practices? So I would say that's one thing. And then from the other hand, what it becomes as a later problem is, if especially you are in a very highly regulated environment where you're dealing with a lot of data that is private or sensitive, then making sure that all of that data is secure is actually one of the biggest priorities that you should have. And the moment you realize like you didn't do it, or there was something, maybe some hacking attack that happened, people or founders start realizing that.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit more about Secfix. So you and your team are building a platform that automates compliance. A few buzzwords here with SOC2, ISO, and much more. Maybe you can explain a little bit more about these topics or these buzzwords, and what does that actually look like in practice?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, you can think of it this way, like traditionally getting, for example, SOC 2 or ISO 27001 is something that companies need to do to show this stamp of trust or proof of trust to enterprise or customers or their partners as well. So they plan to do this, but normally it takes them at least 18 months, 24 months to do it. And it's very manual. You actually need to collect a lot of evidence. You need to deal with a lot of Word documents, spreadsheets, not the AI era anymore. So it's super cumbersome. And you also need to write a lot of policies, like documents from scratch on all of the processes that you need to do. For example, once a year, you need to do a security awareness training. Every quarter, you need to do access reviews. And this needs to be all written down. So imagine, as a small startup, this is too much work, right? And what we do is actually we collect a lot of this evidence that companies are already doing in their day-to-day business by connecting to different tech stack of the company. Like, for example, we can connect to AWS or GCP, Personia, GitHub, Jira, and from there we can create for them basically a automated checklists or specific security checks that they need to go through to be able to become compliant.
And normally that takes a lot of time, usually. How much time does it take now with Secfix?
Yeah, so with Secfix, they can reduce the effort by, from going from this 18, 24 months to a couple of weeks. It always depends on the company as well. Like, for example, if they have a bigger company and they're doing it on the side, so they are not like fully focusing on the project on the get-go, then it can take 2 to 4 months. But if they really focus on the project, then it can be done way faster. Obviously, you also need to think about speed is not the only important thing here. If you do it too fast, it doesn't really make sense, because obviously you need to have the essentials of ISO 27001 or SOC 2 and have built something and lived it as a security culture. So if you're saying like, oh, I did it in 1 week, then it wouldn't be like secure enough. But yeah, having like a good structure and living it day by day, that's actually the most important thing as well.
So investing some time is good, but too much time is also not helpful for the whole system. I would say, let's talk a little bit more about you. What led you into cybersecurity and compliance? Because it's not the sexiest startup space in the market, I think.
Yeah, that's a good question. So it actually was because when I was studying at the Technical University of Munich, I was actually researching already what I wanted to do. I wanted to build my own company, and the tech space or cybersecurity space or always like was something that I really found very interesting. But it came in a point where I was actually talking to CTOs at a conference in Munich, and I was just asking them like, what are their pain points, what are they normally dealing with on a day-to-day basis, without really focusing a lot on like the cybersecurity aspect. And a lot of them told me that they had this pain that they needed to deal with security questionnaires, that they needed to comply with ISO 27001, and they haven't found someone who can help them with that, and they don't know how to get started with it. So that actually led me to think about this a little bit more, into go a little bit deeper into the field. And after talking to hundreds of CTOs, I realized that this is like a real pain that they have, and that also the market is huge as well. So I did also proper research on how big this can become, and realize every SMB or mid-market customer, every company out there that is dealing with data or selling software or even consulting services, they will all need to show like this trust stamp of security, and they won't be able to bypass it. So yeah, that was actually one of the things that made me very interested into the topic. But yeah, on the other hand, just from a personal note, I also like a lot to just help people out, and it felt to me that they felt very frustrated and I had something that I wanted to just help them make their life easier. And that's what our customers also say to us, that they're also always so grateful that we're helping them automate things and make their life easier as well.
Yeah. And yeah, as you mentioned before, it always starts with a small research, with a lot of questions to maybe future clients or CTOs and so on. But was there an exact moment where you saw, okay, this is a massive opportunity, not just a necessary pain?
Yeah. So we, in the very beginning, we were also like in the penetration testing space before, and like we already were doing like vulnerability scans, penetration testing with some of our customers. And I remember one of our very first customers that have been with us since the very beginning. They told us that they actually were about to lose a deal with a big bank in Germany because they didn't have ISO, and they only had 3 months to get it to basically show them that they were able to get certified. And they were struggling, obviously, because they were a small company. They don't really have the resources to put into place to say like, okay, we're just going to focus on this and nothing else, right?
Yeah.
So that was actually the moment where I thought like, okay, this is like a huge pain, because they actually want us to help them build this. We told them, hey, we can help you automate all of this. Let's do it together. Let's do like a pilot project. They also paid for this pilot project as well. So both of like the theory hypothesis that I had, like they have a pain and they're willing to pay for this pain as well, just to make it go away, actually were, pretty much confirmed. And then, yeah, I just saw like a pattern. Once we launched the platform, like basically we helped this customer get certified. They, were able to get their deal. They were super happy about it. They're like, very into security as well. And then once we properly launched the platform, it just started to blow off, like we started to get a lot of, companies that want to pay for it. And it just felt like a real market pool, that they actually needed this to keep going in their business, and not only they didn't see it as a cost saving thing. They saw like, hey, this is like a revenue enabler, basically.
I mean, that's also a dream start, right? To get the pilot client who already pay for the project. Also a great reference. I mean, that's really cool. We are currently entering a world where trust is becoming a competitive advantage. Do you think companies will be judged more on their security posture than the features they produce? And
yeah, I think this is actually already happening. Like when, for example, like a CTO is pitching to an enterprise company, they will evaluate always between two vendors, and they're going to see who has their security in place, who has their trust center in place, who has their policies in place, and who doesn't. And normally this is like your competitive advantage against others that haven't done it before. So security is definitely becoming like this tiebreaker for, on a commercial level, so to say. And it's also increasing in terms of requirements. Like now it's not only about doing it only commercially. There's a lot of regulations that are happening. NIS2, the UAI Act, ISO 42001 that is combined with that as well. So a lot of the things that before you were thinking about having it just as a nice to have are now becoming the standard, So we're moving towards this world where security is not really something you will be able to bypass. We're all remote, we're all working from different parts of the world, and this is just now part of how we live and how we can work as well.
Do you see compliance eventually becoming invisible infrastructure like payments or cloud?
I do actually. Like, if you think about Stripe, for example, normally you use Stripe for payments and you don't really even think about it. You just say like, okay, I need some kind of invoicing or automation software for that, and you just pretty much plug it in. And I see also compliance going the same direction, because from day one, you actually need to make sure that you have the fundamentals of your security posture, that you've been able to create your processes for what I mentioned before, how to deal with employee data, how to train your employees as well when they are onboarded or when they are offboarded. What happens with device security? Like, how are you going to deal with all of the devices that you have, either in the company, like at the office, or when you're working remotely? So all of these different requirements are things that you need to build from the ground up, and need to be set up. And having already like a solution that can tell you like, okay, this is actually what you need to do, but not seeing it only as a checklist, which is actually one of the things that we, preach a lot, that we go very deep into the security niche and we tell them like, these are the things that you guys need to figure out internally. We're going to help you to curate them for your company needs, but our goal is for you to be secure. And yeah, that's actually what we see, that it's becoming more and more. So being part of that invisible infrastructure like cloud and payment systems is going to happen as well.
You mentioned the EU AI Act before. Now everyone knows that we have a lot of regulations in Europe. Do you think we need more regulations in these topics, or we only need one or two good regulations to cover all the topics?
Yeah. I mean, I'm always up for simplicity until, there's a point where it's not that simple anymore, There are specific industries where, data is so sensitive that they will just need to be highly regulated. Like healthcare, for example, is one of them, or companies are working in with governmental institutions. So I do think that there needs to be like a level of simplicity of how much regulation a company should have, especially if they're like a small startup that is just starting, and there might not be, dealing with a lot of sensitive data as an enterprise would. There needs to be some scope that you can define, which is what we also help with, to make it simpler for them, but at the same time that they also pretty much comply with the regulation as well. So yeah, I think it's difficult to say. Obviously Europe is is always for for making, it's famous for making regulations, but at the same time there needs to be also some balance. Otherwise we're all just going to be doing regulation, working with regulations and trying to go through them as well.
I mean, the reason is, especially when it comes to startups and founders, with a lot of regulations, startups and founders make a lot of mistakes. What's the biggest mistakes founders make when it comes to security and compliance?
Yeah, I think most of it, what we mentioned in the beginning, not thinking about it early enough, and also not taking ownership of it. So that not thinking about it early enough, we already discussed it. It's like when you go to the doctor, you go to the doctor when you're already sick. Maybe you should get to the doctor. You should prevent that going to that appointment. So that's one thing. And then the ownership part, what I mean is that a lot of founders, they just are so busy in their day-to-day business that they don't really, they cannot delegate it to anyone. So they try to do it themselves, but sometimes it's just too much for them. So having a proper first of all system that can help them to basically take off that workload that they have from them, that's one of the things that I definitely recommend to do to avoid those mistakes. And on the other hand, making sure that they have a proper plan in place. If you're going to start with your ISO 27001 journey or your SOC 2 journey, you need to know that, like, no matter what, you will need to invest time. There's no way around it. It's just how security is. And you need to plan your week or your next project to know, okay, if I'm the CEO or I'm the CTO and I'm going to be doing this project myself, that you block in your calendar a date for security tasks, for example. Obviously, if you have a little bit more resources, making sure that you can delegate it to someone that has expertise or someone that can, support you operationally, that's even better. But if you don't really have that, then having that proper, we call it project plan, where our customers have like every week, they know exactly what they need to do. They know who is involved, how many hours they need to invest. And that gives you just like a good overview of what's ahead of you within the next 3 months, for example.
So you mean that they should implement the whole topic into their daily operations and also into project operations? Or are there other smart moves what startups can do very early before it's too late?
Yeah, so exactly. So basically not seeing it as this is like a huge project and I won't be able to invest time in it because it's so huge that I'm just going to delay it until it's late. But rather, you can start with smaller tasks and you can put it in your calendar to be able to start doing some things, and that it runs. That's actually one of the things that we always tell our customers, and that work really well as well. And yeah, I would say making sure that you organize your week, but at the same time that you prioritize security. And I know sometimes founders get very unfocused and they start with one thing and then they switch to the other. But having that in mind, that this is going to be right now, maybe it's just a yellow alert, but someday it can become a red alert, and you're going to have either a company telling you that they need your ISO certification and you don't have it yet, or you're going to have a hacking attack, and you as a CEO will be liable for that hacking attack. That's actually something that also CEOs in Germany need to know. Like, if they haven't done proper security implementation, then that's actually part of like personal liability that they need to take as well.
Yeah, because I mean, startups lose so early and so easy the overview of the whole topic, right? And that's really good to mention that every startup should focus on the topic very early to don't have problems later, right? So that's very good tips from your side as expert. Fabiola, we have now the fastest part in our podcast. It's called the Exit or Die Rapid Fire. So it's a quick round, 5 questions from my side, and please 1-sentence answers from your side. And if you are ready, we can start directly.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, my first question is, what's the most overrated security buzzword?
Everything related to AI, cybersecurity, or AI zero trust, for example.
Yeah. Number 2 would be the biggest myth about compliance.
That is just something that you can do once and you leave it and don't think about it ever again. That's not true.
The one, yeah. Number 3 would be the one thing every startup should fix today.
MFA. Just go to your Google Workspace or Office 365 account and enable it for you, everyone.
Okay, that's a good one. Number 4 is, what's the most underestimated risk in software as a service?
I would say vendors, like working with third-party tools and not doing the proper review for those tools.
Yeah. And my favorite question, if you were not building Secfix, what would you build?
Yeah, that's a good one. Something definitely, yeah, something in the climate space, something against pollution, I would say. That was always my dream. A second company is going to be something about helping the world make it cleaner. And why? Because I'm a super fan of making sure that our world is, very, very clean, and that the next generations can have a nice life as we did as well.
Yeah, before it's too late. That's perfect. Fabiola, if you could give one piece of advice to every startup founder about security, what would it be?
Yeah, I would say don't treat security as something like as a burden or something that you need to carry and that it's very tedious to do. Treat it as a foundation you build on trust, and treat it as something that your customers will really value about your brand. Your brand is your reputation, and this is actually the most important thing that you can do to be able to be serious about who you partner up with. Your product, now with AI, everyone can build a product very, very fast. You can also build websites, prototypes, whatever, but having that trust inside your product and making sure that you are that company that everyone goes to, because you are taking things seriously. That speaks a lot about the founding team, about the company itself, about the brand and the product, and how you are actually serving your customers. So yeah, I would say that's my advice to everyone out there who is still thinking about it and not 100% sure. Maybe double think again and to think twice if this makes sense to start earlier on.
Yeah. I call myself as a fighter against regulations. So I'm not a big fan of regulations. We mentioned that before with EU AI Act and all the stuff, because in my opinion, all the governments are only doing, build more regulations that small companies have it very hard to build up companies, to build up their dream and all the stuff. If you would have one wish free, so what would it be in the direction of governments? What would it be, or what would you tell them? I mean, regulations, compliance, that's your business. You make it easy for companies, right? But too much regulations would also kill your company, right? Because yeah, it's too much, I think. What would the wish be?
Yeah, look, I'm also on the same side here. Like, I think to be able to have a good, basically to have the economy to grow, you also need to put less hurdles to, especially to smaller businesses. And I'm talking about regulations on other parts that I needed to deal with myself. So if I would, say or something to, like an advice or a recommendation to the government, it would be to actually think twice how you can set up that regulation as a scope, and making sure that it's easier to understand who is actually needing to do this and who is not, who doesn't need to do it. Because sometimes it's very broad, and it's very difficult to translate. Everyone has a different interpretation of what the regulation is about. And I think having that differentiation of, okay, this is actually something that bigger enterprises need to do, but maybe not smaller companies, that would make a huge difference. And sometimes that happens also with, ISO 27001, or with other compliance standards that are not highly regulated everywhere. There's still like a market norm, I would say, that companies just use. But sometimes I just see startups doing like enterprise level tasks that they don't even have like a proper IT security team, but they are still doing all of this stuff, which also makes it more complicated for them to grow. So just simplifying all of that would be easier.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, Fabiola, what are the next plans? What are the next steps for Secfix?
Yeah, so we have exciting things going on. So we just recently raised our Series A of 12 million. So now we're, basically going into just automating whatever we can in terms of compliance, but specializing in ISO 27001, information security, SOC 2, NIS 2, and the other frameworks as well. And right now, our main focus will be to start distributing our software not only in the DACH region, where we're already one of the biggest providers, but also in Europe as well. We already serve over 15 European countries, and we want to make sure that we now can start helping more SMBs and also mid-market customers out there that need to start with their security journey or have already done a certification before and want to integrate all of their systems as well. So yeah, just making sure that we become that European provider for companies. That's the main goal.
Yeah, that's great, and I'm sure that we definitely hear more about you and your team in the future. Unfortunately, we are coming to an end of this episode, but it's time for one last message from you to our community. What would it be?
Maybe not security related, but just generally about founding a company. Just make sure to keep going and not to give up. It wasn't like that I just found, that idea and it works and people pay and I got the pilot and it started to flow. You need time to invest in different ideas. You need to test it. You need to talk, especially to your users, to your customers, and try to understand what their pain points are and iterate from there. We still keep iterating at Secfix a lot, especially now with AI, which obviously makes it even more exciting for us, because what Secfix looked like 1 year ago looks way different now. So just keep iterating and keep being positive that you will be able to find that pain point and that you will be able to start your own company as well.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you so much. I really appreciate all the insights. I wish you all the best for the future. I'm definitely sure that we will hear more about Secfix, you and your team. I would say
Thanks,
that's
Peter.
it for this episode of Exit or Die. Big thanks to you, Fabiola Munguia, for reminding us that security is not something you add later. It's something you build from day one, as you mentioned before. Because in the end, if your users don't trust you, nothing else matters. Fabiola, thank
Thanks,
you
Peter.
so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.